In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to work with strings. Specifically, we're going to talk about 4 different things that I want you to be able to learn how to do with the strings. I want you to learn how to concatenate strings, or take 2 strings and combine them together. I want you to learn how to index and slice the strings. I'll have to figure out what that means. We're going to talk about how strings are immutable and what that means exactly, and if for something to be immutable. Then finally, we're going to check to see if a string is within another string. So is there a bigger string, and is there a smaller string inside of that, containing that it's in there? So let's learn how to work with strings. So for this set of exercises and lessons, we're going to create another file, and we're going to do cat strings.py in there. Remember, if dunder name is equal to dunder main, and we're going to start working with that. The first thing we're going to learn about is concatenation. So we're going to put a comment there. It says concatenation, and talk about this. So we can, you can concatenate 2 strings together using this, using that, the addition or the plus operator. So we've got Leia, and that's going to equal I love you. And then we've got Han, and the most iconic response ever. He says, I know. And well, Leia and Han, they just can't be separated. So let's put them together. Print Leia plus Han. Let's see what that happens when we do that. So Python catstrings.py, we run this. I love you, I know. Wait a minute. Do you see something kind of odd here? Oh, there's a space here. Well, let's do something else. Remember, operators can have, statements can have multiple operators inside of them. So we're going to do an empty space in between them. Now let's run this and see what happens when we do that. I love you, space. I know. Ugh, the world is all the much better, except now Han is now frozen in carbonite, but that's okay. It's saved later on. Spoiler alert. That's okay. So that's how you would concatenate 2 strings. You take them and you put them together. And actually, you're concatenating 3 strings here. We have Leia, we have just a single space, and we have Han that's in there. And we've concatenated those 2 together and printed them all out as 1. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is indexing and slicing. So if you'll remember, when we went back and ran that code, the for loop that took hello there and printed out each individual ones in there along with its index. So 0 was H, and E was 1, or sorry, 1 was E, and 2 was L, and 3 was L, and so forth, all the way through hello there. Well, what we can think about is strings are sequences, which that means they're a collection of subparts to them. So a list is a sequence. A tuple is a sequence, and we're going to talk about all those. But we're going to talk about that a string is the most basic sequence that you have inside of Python. So that means that it's made up of a bunch of little individual characters, parts inside of there, right? So substrings almost that's inside of there. It's a sequence of substrings that's in there. That means that they've got indexes. So that means we can actually take a numerical location that points out that that specific character that's inside of there. That's element. And again, really reiterate this. This is kind of one of the most common things that beginner Python programmers mess up is that all strings, all indexes, all sequence types, they have an index starting with 0 that's in there. And so we can actually slice out some strings using this. And so we can use that kind of notation that's in there. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take Han's best ship here. And we're going to equal this to Millennium Falcon, like this. Okay. And what we want to do is print ship and brackets, open close bracket, and 0. What? So what we're doing here is we're indexing into. That's where these brackets kind of come in. We're saying, I want you to only show me the 0 index character. It's in there. So that's going to show the M of the Millennium Falcon. And just to prove that to you, let's comment everything else out here and run this. And we can see, indeed, M is the only thing that's printed out. Now, we've assigned this to a variable. That doesn't mean that we have to do this to a variable. We could do ship here, print that out, and what are we going to get? Well, we should get a lowercase s, and ta-da, we do. But since we mostly work with variables, this is what we're going to be messing around with. One interesting thing that you can do is you can actually slice things out. So we can do this to 9 like this. And what this does is this goes from the index of 0 to the index of 8. So 9 is the stopping point. So if we count this, let's say this. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5, this is 6, this is 7, and this is 8. 9 would be technically this one right here. But we're not including that. We're saying stop at 9. Don't include 9. This is the next thing that kind of Python has a little bit of oddities to that. Python starts at 0 and then slices to the end value, to the end index, meaning not including. So if we were to include 9, then we should see Millennium Falcon space. And to prove that, what we're going to do is do this. So I'm going to print, I'm going to wrap this this slice of this string with just single quotations. Let's run this again. And we can see Millennium truly is going from there. Now, if I change this to 10, we would see an additional space here because we're stopping at 10, not including it. It's in there. But really, we just want 9. That's there. We can actually skip this and do some interesting notations. So when we're slicing something, what you're doing is you're extracting out a small part of it. It doesn't have to be 0. I could do 2 to 9 and see what that does. Like this, and we've got a millennium in there. But 0 is kind of usually what you do. There's a shorthand way of doing this. You can actually just ignore the 0, leave it in there. And if you don't put anything there and you just do the colon and then the ending index, then that means you just include 0. They automatically assume you're starting at the beginning of that string. that's in there. And you can see that here. And to prove it, you can also do it the other way around. So let's do 11 to the end, like that. And now we've got alkane. So let's change this to 10. And now we've got falcon. So that's what you can do with slicing, is you're able to extract out specific chunks of a string out based off of what the index and the you do that using the square brackets, the first number, which is your starting index, including that index, then colon, and then your ending index that doesn't include that index value that's in there. A little bit confusing, but that's okay. Next up, let's talk a little bit about immutability and what that really means. So we've got our ship here, and it's called the Millennium Falcon. And what I want to do and show you is this bold statement is equal to ship plus is the fastest in the galaxy. Print bold statement. We got Falcon. Millennium Falcon is the fastest in the galaxy. I think we would all agree with that. But what's interesting about this is we didn't actually change ship. So we did an addition here. So we have on this right-hand side an operator that makes changes to this, and we saved it to this. Let's print ship and see what happens. Well, nothing happened to it. It stayed the same. What does that mean? Well, that means that it can't be changed. It's immutable. So that's what immutability means, is it's something that they can't be changed. You're unable to change the value of that without having to reassign that value. There are other objects inside of Python that are mutable. You are able to change. And to even further show this, ship of 0 is equal to s. This will not work because this string is immutable. And we can see we get an error. Let's debug. Which file do we run into an error? Cat strings is correct. What line? 22. Good job. What type of error did we get? Type error. And what's the message? Well, string does not support item assignment. That's because it's immutable. You can't make changes to the ship. At least not without reassigning it first. So ship is equal to s plus ship of 1 to the end. What I've done here is I have said ship is now changing this variable value is now the letter S plus whatever the previous ship was, except for that first character. Because remember, we start with 0. So we combine those two together. What do we get? Selenium Falcon. There. So we've talked about how strings can be concatenated. We talked about how you can index into them using the bracket notation, and And then we talked about how strings are immutable. There's one more thing I want to talk to you about, and that's how to check if a string is inside of there. And so let's do that using this. Jedi Masters is equal to, we've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, we've got Yoda, we've got Qui-Gon Jinn, like that. Now, I want to check to see, is Anakin in Jedi Masters inside of there? I want to see if the substring Anakin is actually inside of that Jedi Masters string that's in there. Let's check that and see what happens. False. No, he is not. And that's because Anakin never achieved the rank of Jedi Master. Well, we can see that by using the in operator. So this is new. We've been kind of dealing with what almost is like arithmetic type operators, the plus, the minus, the multiplication. Now we've thrown in this new one called in. The in, what it does is it checks to see if the right side contains the value of the left side. It's in there. In other words, is Anakin in the Jedi Masters that's in there? Well, we can check. We do have this other list. Council members is Anakin, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and Qui-Gon Jinn. They were all council members. And so now let's check if Anakin is in the council members. So we're going to Python cat strings. We see that this is false for the first one, but the second one is now true because indeed Anakin is a member of the council members. He is in that string that's in there. We'll talk about Boolean logic and what exactly it means to be false and true a little bit later on, but this is a really good way for you to kind of check to see, hey, is a substring inside of another string that's in there? Next up, we're going to talk about string methods and what exactly that means as far as string methods that's in there. So stay tuned for something really kind of neat, I think, at least, with what you can do with strings. It's their methods.